Hi everyone, so today we're going to take a look at how Masterchannel works with different mixes and different export settings. Specifically, we're going to take a look at how Masterchannel works on a mix with plenty of headroom, and then how Masterchannel works on a mix that has already been mastered. And what you will see is that Masterchannel accepts anything you upload, really. It works with any specification. There's no golden standard that you need to follow, but it will still be interesting to see how the outcome is going to be different depending on what you upload. So let's dive right into it. So let's first take a look at the mix that we have here. And we can see that it's, fairly quiet, as it should be. We have plenty of headroom. Actually, maybe if I go in and get these meters out here specifically, things a little bit easier. So now we're going to upload the mix to Masterchannel. And because it has plenty of headroom, the engine has a lot of different options to optimize the track. So I just click on drag and drop. I'm gonna choose my mix. And now it's uploading the track to Masterchannel. So now I'm waiting for the track. And what's great about Masterchannel is no matter what I throw at Masterchannel, I can rest assured that the outcome is always gonna meet music industry standards. So no matter if I upload something that's squashed or something that's more dynamic, the outcome is still gonna be fairly consistent, or as consistent as it can be. When you mix your music, usually you shouldn't be too concerned about loudness levels. You should be more concerned about headroom to make sure nothing peaks and you don't over-compress your music before mastering. The more compressed or squashed your music is, when it comes to mastering, the fewer options the engine has to optimize your music. So if you want to preserve the dynamics and the energy of your mix, it's usually a good idea to not squash or over-compress your music. However, in the mastering process, and that's Masterchannel's job, it's actually quite important to look at loudness levels, because streaming platforms try to play back all the music at the same volume, so that if listeners listen to a track that was mastered at a quieter level and a louder level, they're not shocked by the loud track being played back. However, one common misconception is that you should master all your music at -14 LUFS. That actually doesn't work across the board, because sometimes you have tracks with many quiet and loud parts, and sometimes you have music that is fairly consistent in volume. And if you master all that music at -14 LUFS, you will have some music that sounds super squashed and some music that will sound super dynamic. So what an engineer actually does is the engineer looks at the loudest parts of the track and checks the integrated loudness value of those parts. And in those parts, you usually look at a integrated loudness value of -9, -10 LUFS. And that's also what I'm expecting Masterchannel to do. What that means for the human engineer track that we're going to upload later is that Masterchannel will try to probably take down the overall volume a little bit. So you will still have the squashed sound from the mix, because that's something you can't fix, but it will still try to make it sound quieter. So if you want the squashed sound, for example, if you produce hip hop or a genre where you really want that compressed sound, that's something you can do. But in general, if you really aim for maximum dynamics and punch, it's usually a better idea to stay in the dynamic space and let all the compression and limiting be done in the mastering process, aka by Masterchannel. So now we can see that the mix has been mastered, and I can listen to the before and after, so the mix and the master in this player. So if I go to the chorus here and listen to the before. But I'm actually going to download the track so we can compare it in our DAW. Now we can already see that the waveform is much wider than before, because Masterchannel obviously tried to get the mix to a competitive loudness level. So what we can do now is switch between before and after and see how Masterchannel has changed the loudness levels. Here we go. Can't tell no one what you've done. So what you can see now is that obviously we have a much higher peak level, because Masterchannel used all the available headroom to make the track louder. And if you look at the loudness levels, you can see that we reached the integrated loudness level I was talking about of around -9, depending on where you measure in the track. And if we compare that to the mix before, We can monitor these stats again. Maybe it's actually better if I monitor them on the track directly. So if I put the loudness meter on this one for the master channel version, and then we have the loudness meter on the mix. So we can clearly see that the master is much louder. Now, obviously, that's not a fair comparison because the mix had a lot of headroom. So if I really want to just compare loudness before and after, I would have to normalize the mix. So now I've normalized the mix as well. And now we can actually look at the loudness in comparison before and after. So what we can clearly see is that now, despite having the same peak level, the master channel version is louder, and that's also what the loudness meters tell us. If we do a clean comparison of the chorus again, we can see that the original mix was at around minus 10.7 integrated, and the master is now at minus 8.7, so around minus 9 LUFS. So this worked really well with the mix, and now we're going to see what Masterchannel does to the squashed version that we got from a human engineer. Just for comparison, I'm going to play it back real quick, and then I'm going to upload it to Masterchannel. I know what is done. Okay, so now I'm going to upload that to Masterchannel as well. Just going to refresh the page. And I'm going to select the human mastering version. Now what I'm expecting Masterchannel to do is obviously try to find the same loudness level again. But what I'm also expecting Masterchannel to do is probably do fewer tweaks, because since the music is already so squashed, it's probably going to be much harder for the system to do deeper adjustments to the audio. So the cool thing about Masterchannel accepting already mastered music is that, you can use it as a second stage quality assurance step if you get something from an engineer and you don't really know if you can trust it. And also, if you aim for a certain sound, Masterchannel is going to pick up on that and try to retain that sound as much as possible. So if you go after a squashed sound, you can totally upload something that's already squashed, and Masterchannel will retain those properties while still making sure that it's at the end of the day going to meet all the different standards you need for streaming platforms and other formats. So now we can see that the master is done, and again I can play it back in the player before and after mastering. So let's jump to the chorus, start with before. What is done? What is done? What is done? And now we can hear that the EQ sounds quite different, but the loudness level or the dynamics are actually quite similar, just as we expected. So again, I'm going to download the file. I'm going to import it into our DAW. So what you're going to hear now is the human version, and then I'm going to switch to the Masterchannel version. Can't I know what is done? What is done? Inside your lung. Can't I know what is done? What is done? What is done? So what you can see is that actually the loudness is pretty much the same. Masterchannel squashed out a little bit more, made it a little bit more consistent, which you can see by the loudness range. But otherwise, the only thing that really changed was the EQ. And now, last but not least, what we're going to do is we're going to compare the human version to the original mastered mix that came out of Masterchannel. Because as I said, it's a bit more difficult for the system to figure things out with a squashed mix. So now we have the true comparison between a dynamic mix and what Masterchannel does and what a human engineer does. So let's check that out. Let's reset all of these. Can't I know what is done? What is done? What is done? What is done? And now this is actually quite interesting. So you can hear that the Masterchannel version sounds, in my ears, has much more depth, you could argue, because it didn't squash the sound as much. And that's also something you can read here in the loudness meter. You can see that the loudness range of the Masterchannel mastered version is actually higher or bigger than the loudness range of the human engineered version, which indicates that there are more dynamics present in the Masterchannel version, which, you know, can be what you want in your music, while the integrated loudness level is actually more or less the same. So we reach the same loudness level while preserving more dynamics. And that's actually quite a neat thing to have. So this is, as I said, very interesting to see. You can actually also make it out by looking at the waveform. You can see that the human version is, significantly more squashed, you could say, to achieve the same loudness. Whereas the Masterchannel version preserves a lot more of the dynamics and the waveform looks a bit more natural and less sausagey, if you will. And that's quite cool to see. Obviously, if you prefer the squash sounds, that's your preference. I would say that I personally prefer the more dynamic sound because especially if it gets normalized on streaming platforms later, the more dynamic version is going to have more impact on the listener's end device. Because, as I said, it's going to be played back at the same volume, but if you preserve more dynamics, you have more punch that actually comes through at the end listener's end. So there you have it. This was a quick overview of what happens when you upload different mix versions, different squashness levels, if you will, to a Masterchannel. Bottom line is, if you can, it might be beneficial to upload something that has more headroom, but Masterchannel really eats anything. So if you have a squashed mix already, or if you have an engineered version, you can still upload it to Masterchannel and you will still get a result that sounds good enough. I think what's interesting to see here is that yes, you do get different outcomes depending on what you upload, but there is no best version that you can upload to get the best outcome. Masterchannel really accepts anything and everything that you throw at it. So I encourage you to just upload whatever you like and see how it influences your outcome. If you also found this interesting or you want to see something else or more in-depth insights into what happens at Masterchannel, please let us know in the comments. We also have our socials down there. And as always, feel free to reach out to us through our website to have a chat about whatever is important to you in mastering. See you soon.